private advocates in private practice appear to be inflating their prices when doing work for the state. This is what the Office of the State Attorney told the Portfolio Committee on Justice and Correctional Services. Acting Solicitor General Pandelani says Counsel charges more in state litigation compared to private litigation. Pandelani is in Johannesburg and joins me now via Zoom to discuss this further. Mr. Pandelani, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. So this is a big problem, is it?
Thank you, Mr. Smelani. Yes, it is indeed a big problem. I think just to contextualize, there are quite a number of good, well-meaning legal practitioners out there, as it is with those that, in fact, are in the public service under the auspices of the state attorneys. But you do find that there are pockets of those that, in fact, will do something that is uncouth, something unconscionable in the lines that you have actually outlined. And it is a big problem.
Where's the loophole? What loophole are they exploiting that's making it possible to inflate costs in a manner that they would not even dream of in work that they do in the private sector?
Look, I think there is an environment that is enabling because, of course, if you would come up with a bill that is considered to be overreaching, somebody from within the state attorney should be able to scrutinize that bill. But there could be, and there are those instances where probably there is a scheme of arrangement, connivance with the private practitioner and somebody internally that would not necessarily do that which they are supposed to be doing. And whether there is benefication or not, you will never be able to tell. But those are some of the things that one is observing in that space.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you bring that up and not me. The whole appearance in some instances of some kickbacks, really, in that how far are we with you getting to the bottom of that system where there have been allegations of corruption within the state attorney's office in the interactions with advocates and attorneys in private practice when they are briefing them, in that, you know, perhaps part of what we're seeing here, this almost blank check that is there for attorneys in private practice is suspected to be linked to certain kickbacks among some officials. How far are your investigations and trying to plug that gap?
Look, I mean, the state is spending billions and billions of rand every year in protecting its legal interests. And this is one of the issues that, in fact, I found when I actually was appointed. There are quite a number of investigations that the Special Investigating Unit is doing. As at the last count, we had about 27 cases that they were actually dealing with, and some will, in fact, be prosecuted in the normal course. But the rot, in fact, goes deeper. So we're going back in years to 2010 and beyond, so that we can actually try to see these trends and plug those holes. So it is not something that we are saying we have finalized. There are cases that you will have to go back and look at your audit reports and the extent of the bills that have been submitted to the state and interrogate and see whether there are instances that could point to some overreaching.
You are also calling for parameters for fees that can be charged. How do you envisage that working?
Look, you know, a day is comprised of 24 hours. But where you would find in certain instances somebody having billed for almost 24 hours, then you start asking yourself a very difficult question to say, under what circumstances is this person billing for 24 hours, for example? And remember, from the vantage point at which I am, I'm able to look at other services that particular perhaps legal practitioner has rendered to other organs of state. And if you are to, in fact, sit down and look at the number of hours on one particular day, for example, and you see that there are quite a number of invoices that, in fact, are interspersed with a number of hours on one particular day, you then have clear indications that there is an element of overreaching. So the fee parameters it's not an easy thing insofar as counsel, advocates are concerned, but fees are agreed upfront.
Yeah.
And even when fees are agreed upfront, you still have limitations of a day. And as I'm actually alluding to, if you find that somebody is billing beyond a day in terms of what is acceptable within the legal practice council's rules would be about between 8 to 10 hours. Beyond that is overreaching.
Right.
Parameters are actually set by the oversight bodies themselves, the bar councils, and also the legal practice councils. And where we see that a legal practitioner is going beyond those parameters, then in fact those are clear indications that we need to look zoom into that space and see whether, in fact, somebody is trying to enrich himself or herself at the instance of the state.
Mr. Pandelani, as I run out of time, let me ask you a question that I must say, in fairness, I did not brief you beforehand that I would ask you about it. So I will take the response that you give. I'm asking it because you are in the position in which you serve. Reports emerging around former Minister Batabile Dlamini and the issue of her pension being withheld. Your organization, your structure, the State Attorney's Office, somewhere mentioned in that particular conversation that also involves the South African Social Security Agency. What's your understanding of that matter?
Thank you for ambushing me. Mr. Spellan, I think I might not necessarily deal with the merits. Ethically, I'm not allowed to even touch on the merits. I think the narrative that has been there has been that there's been political interferences with the work of the state attorneys. And that is what, in fact, we sought to correct, to say there is no political interferences with the work of state attorneys. State attorneys are and always act on the instructions of the client. In this particular instance, the instructions would have emanated from a client agency, which is the social SASA. And it is not correct to say that there are political machinations at play. We play very far from politics.
All right, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. I ambushed you because I knew that you would be able to navigate your way through that particular question. That's the Acting Solicitor General there, Fedzisani Pandelani, talking to me about various matters that have to do with work that the state procures for the provision of legal services. You're watching All Angles.